Hi, Black Hollywood Live fans. Today we've got a mixed legal bag for the Kardashian-Jenner clan. One wins, one loses, and we find out the real reason, using air quotes, why Suge claims Dre has tried to get him killed. That and more on today's Justice is Served.
You are tuned into Black Hollywood Lives. Justice is served.
Hello, Justice fans, and welcome to another episode of Justice is Served, where we serve you up the latest in legal news from this week. My name is Chelsea Galicia. I am joined by my co-host and fellow attorney, Shaka Smith. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Very good. I guess I want to just jump right in to the top story, which was very ironic for me given the conversation last week.
Yeah, with Judge Archuleta.
Yes,
Or,
well, she's
running for.
Yes, she's a DA, Deborah Archuleta. If you didn't see our show from last week, make sure you do see that one, because it was a cool episode where we spent virtually 45 minutes, an hour with her talking about her experience, part of which includes being the head of the stalking unit, taking care of these like celebrity stalking cases, which are constantly in the news. And we mentioned briefly the Kendall Jenner this situation. And I asked Deborah specifically, and it's so funny that the case came down to this very issue, what's the difference between a trespasser and a stalker?
Yeah, and so she kind of told us that it had to do with numerosity of times they were found and the threatening nature of that interaction.
Yeah.
And so it looks like the court found here that Siobhan McKenzie, who was arrested following Kendall Jenner up her driveway, they found he was not a stalker. And so he was found not guilty, and he is on a restraining order for the next 5 years.
Right.
He's got to stay away from her, but he's found not guilty, and I guess he'll be released November 10th.
Yeah, so it was interesting to me. I have a couple of, I don't know how much insight it is, but Kendall lives across the street from my friend. It's over near, I don't really know if I should be saying this because it might help about more stalkers. Anyway, if you're in LA, you know where the Chateau Marmont is. It's near there.
Yeah.
So it's a very small street, and if you look to her house, you can't even see it. You have to go through a long driveway. All you just see is this big gate. You got to go through the gate. I don't know how far, because there's like a house there, but you have to go around it to get to her house.
Yeah.
And so apparently she one night went in there. Ironically that she went alone that night, because my friend is constantly annoyed by how many people are at Kendall Jenner's house.
I'm sure.
And she's had to go across the street and be like, my 2-year-old is sleeping, knock this stuff off. And Kendall has been apologetic and has sent her sort of sorry gifts to make up for it, but she's never really alone. So it was ironic that this particular evening she came home alone, and this guy followed her in the driveway and then apparently was banging on the window. And she testified that she was petrified out of her mind, never been so scared in her life. Yeah. And that very quickly became a trial. I mean, this whole thing happened within months.
So quickly, yeah.
And she gets up there and retells this story and says how scared she was. She's never been so scared in her life. And yet, the verdict is not guilty of stalking.
Well, I mean, I guess a reasonable person has to find the behavior by the defendant threatening. And, you know, if I guess knocking on the window wasn't enough, there was no actual threat, or maybe there was no threat of violence or harm.
Yeah. So that's what I briefly talked to Deborah about this. I said, hey, we just had talked about this. Any insight on this? And I thought that maybe they didn't find him guilty of stalking because this was an only incident. I know that
but I think he's been following her.
But he'd been following her, but you can't just, I mean, it's not just following, it's like following in a threatening manner.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe this was the only time that it was a threatening manner. The other time was just annoying and following, but didn't quite meet the threshold of stalking. And so therefore there wasn't enough of a pattern set to call this stalking behavior.
Yeah.
But apparently the real reason it looks like the jury went this way is because they didn't find that it was a real credible threat to her safety.
Yeah, knocking on the window, yeah.
Although, dear God, that would scare me.
And likely this was a fan, maybe just someone who wanted to meet her, you know, but you never know what you're coming up against.
Yes, and it's a stranger, and according to his own mom, he's got mental health issues, and so...
So thankfully it looks like she will be flying him back to VA to address some of those issues.
Yeah, but that I would be really bummed if I was her. Like, that doesn't count as stalking. I mean, I guess it must be difficult for jurors to really put themselves in that situation
Yeah.
and to sort of be her in that mindset of coming home alone. And I mean, because we normal folk don't have that kind of issue.
And we don't have those sort of like fans. So
Right.
essentially, I think it really turned on that threatening nature. And
Yeah.
this person probably was just a genuine fan. But,
Did this happen before or after Kim's robbery?
I believe this was after.
So that would be another reason.
Oh no,
why,
this would have happened before her robbery.
I remember they were being
Yeah.
very close in
Yeah.
time. But I mean, if this had happened after, to have that mindset of my sister just got
Yeah.
held up and here comes this guy, oh dear God. So it is not that, there are some major drawbacks to being
Oh,
a
of
celebrity
course, yeah.
of this kind. So the guy wasn't convicted of stalking, but he was convicted of trespassing.
Yeah. So
Ironic, because that was the question that I had asked. And so I
Same.
guess he just came onto property that he wasn't welcome on, and that was it.
yeah, in the end of the day, the authorities will be monitoring his whereabouts as long as he's in California until he goes back to Virginia. So, yeah, at least she can get some sort of sense of safety from that.
Yeah, and then for weeks, and I think they may be back, but after that there was constant 24/7, a guy in a
Oh, yeah.
car parked in front of my friend's place, who was, a nice guy and helped walk the dog, but was there like just 24/7, just watching over. And it's not even watching the house, because from the street you can't see the house. It's just watching over this gate.
Yeah.
And I think that's back now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, kind of is a nuisance for the whole neighborhood.
Yeah, but I mean, really, you have this sort of huge type of celebrity now with social media, and with social media, people know your whereabouts. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a perfect storm. So you have to be vigilant.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of vigilant, apparently Suge had to be vigilant because Dre was out to kill him.
Yeah.
So we had talked before about this. It wasn't a case before. It was just sort of something that was being said.
Yeah.
And so how we got this new story about why is because of this wrongful death claim involving
Suge Knight.
Terry. Why can't
Terry Carter.
Thank
Terry
you.
Carter,
Blanking on his name. So this was a cross complaint.
Yeah.
So I remember being confused about this in law school. So if I sue you
Yeah.
and you sue me back, that's a counterclaim.
Accountable. Yeah.
But if I sue you and
Another defendant.
let's say it was Yemi,
Yeah.
and then
I believe Yemi is at fault.
so then that is a cross complaint.
Yeah.
All right, so you can keep this all straight now. So in the original claim, it was Terry Carter's family suing Suge, Dre, Ice Cube, and we've
Yeah.
talked about now that everybody but Suge
Suge
Knight.
Knight has been dropped from the case.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit bizarre that at this point he can do a cross complaint to another defendant that isn't in the claim anymore, but I guess he did. So out of that wrongful death claim, he has filed a cross complaint against
Dr. Dre. Yeah.
for trying to kill him.
Yeah.
Why does he say that Dre's been trying to kill him?
Well, so he says that he and Dr. Dre had a lifetime management agreement, and he was supposed to get 30% for
His
life.
whole life,
yeah,
yeah.
for the rest of his life. And obviously, after Dr. Dre parted ways with Suge Knight, Dr. Dre certainly didn't honor that agreement, and he had the $1 billion from selling beats to Apple, and so he wanted 30% of that. He wanted 30% of the proceeds from Straight Outta Compton. Any money that Dre has made since he's
Suge
been
wants
paid in the 90s.
30%.
30%. And, if his lifetime agreement is held to be valid, he should get it, right?
Well, that's a good question. But here's the thing with contracts: we all normally, or at least before I went to law school, I thought you come up with a contract because that legally binds you to an agreement, and that the contract is about creating an agreement that you can't get out of.
Yeah.
But truthfully, an agreement, part of it is it walks you through the steps of getting out of the agreement.
Yeah.
Because in the law, it is sometimes economically sound to break an agreement, and you just have to have a way to unravel it or to unwind it.
Yeah.
And every contract is like that. I mean, how many people take a vow to get married and spend the rest of their days with somebody?
Exactly. And
We don't hold people to that contract for their whole life. There's a way out of that.
yeah, courts don't like lifetime contracts. We don't like to be restrictive on people to the extent that they're covered beyond a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
So typically in management agreements, you'll see a manager is entitled to to their percentage maybe 2 or 3 years after the
and then
relationship has ended, because there's something to be said for the manager's work continuing to have, you getting the fruits after the work has been done. But yeah, a lifetime.
It's been like 20 years now, right?
96 was the last time they had seen each other or talked to each other. And
so literally 20 years later, and he wants that
30% for the entire interim.
I don't see how he would get it. I mean, because there's got to be two sides to a contract. If I agree to pay you 30%, there's a reason, right? It's because you've done something, some kind of work that helped get me that deal in the first place. It's consideration. It's a give and take. You can't just have one side agree, I'm going to pay you 30%.
For the rest, after the work is long ended, I'm no longer receiving the fruits from the work that you've put in. And how this is connected, because it might seem a little disjointed. How do we get to this?
We're talking about death and 30% of $1 billion. How did we get here?
And so we got here because he says the reason he ran over Terry Carter is because a man by the name of Clee Sloan and Jimmy Chris rushed the car armed to kill Suge Knight, and that they were sent by Dr. Dre. So that's how we get into the 30%.
Except the problem is that Suge had been asked to leave the set before, and he came back. Yeah. This was a second encounter.
Yeah, but if what caused him to swerve were two armed men that were sent by Dr. Dre.
Except in the video that we saw, at least I didn't see anything. So I mean, that's a question of fact for the jury to decide whether there was any gun around. But I don't remember seeing one. I mean, it's been a couple years now. I mean, right? Was it 2012, 15, or very early in 2015? Yeah. And I don't believe that there was. So it seems a bit of a stretch to me. Yeah. Because then if Suge really felt that Dre owed him all this money, go to court. Yeah. Right? That's what it's for.
Well, but he wanted to tie it to this reason behind the murder, or behind why he ran over Terry Carter. He also alleges that in August of 2014, that when he was shot in the abdomen 7 times, that was also by Dr.
That was
Dre's.
that VMA party right here.
I'm not sure where that was. I think that might have been it might have been a fast food place, and they called it the Murder Cafe, or...
No, so that's where he ran over Terry Carter, was at the Tam's Burger joint. Okay. And I am so not in with the club names anymore, but come on, the one on Sunset that took over Key Club... Come on, it's a big...
You're talking, was it Hyde?
No.
Bootsy Bellows?
No. Older than that. Oh, dear God. I need to get in with the club names just so that I can do this show better. I can't believe that I'm forgetting, but yeah. it's gonna come to me. But
so August 2014, he was shot 7 times, and he also blames that on Dre.
Right. Okay. So I don't think this is going to go anywhere. This is the 30% for in perpetuity, not going to go anywhere. Because even if you were to sue and win, like let's just say when you were 18 years old, Shaka, we signed something. I said I get 30% for the rest of your life, and you stop paying. If I sue you, I might get something, but I'm not going to get 30% for the rest of your life. No. A judge is very unlikely to force specific performance on really any kind of contract, and especially this kind of contract.
Yeah, they might give you maybe 2 to 3 years, unless you can show, a particular client re-upped with them because of your services.
Right. So his claim that Dre was going so far to try and avoid this 30% that he was trying to get him killed.
And that Apple and Universal purposely kept Suge Knight's name out of the various deals they had because they wanted to avoid having his name associated with their companies because they thought it would be bad for business.
Okay, yeah, maybe that could be true, and that has nothing to do with whether he's really owed the 30%.
Yeah, I think he's trying to say it speaks to a coordinated attempt to block him from this money that he's owed.
Well, I mean, hello. Yeah. If you really thought that, why didn't you file a lawsuit before? Yeah. And I think he might have, and then it didn't go anywhere. Yeah. So that one, I don't think it's a long shot. I think it maybe just gives him something to think about while he's struggling in jail, because this is not going to end well for him.
Yeah, I don't see it going anywhere.
Okay, and so now back to the Kendall, Jenner Kardashian legal stories. This week, Kim won, basically. a lawsuit that she filed against a gossip site that tried to say her robbery was a staged fake that she did to try and get some insurance money.
Yeah, Media Takeout on this website, it's very popular, and their stories are always kind of very explosive. So they were publishing stories that Kim Kardashian lied about this robbery, and then that she then lied to the insurance company, and that she filed, what was it, a $5.6 million insurance claim. So these were serious charges, essentially, leveled against her in public that people were believing. I know people still talk about whether or not this robbery was real. And so you can imagine from her standpoint that she was traumatized and she felt like she wanted a full public retraction, and she got it in exchange for dropping the lawsuit.
Yeah, it doesn't really happen that often. First of all, it hardly ever happens that celebrities sue for this kind of thing because it's very difficult for them to prove. We talk about it a lot on this show about how they've got to show a malicious intent behind lying or serious disregard for the truth.
Exactly.
And it's a very hard burden to meet. And it must have been that Media Takeout thought that she stood a chance of proving that, because they not only deleted the story, but they went on and did
issued a full apology that I'm certain Kardashian's lawyer wrote, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was long, and it was like, we took it down.
And it really hit point by point that she didn't lie, the robbery was real. She, no one should really second guess someone in this kind of traumatic experience she received. So it really kind of point by point was like broke down any idea that there was something untoward going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I wish they still would have had, not to pay her money, because it's not like we think she...
They may have paid her money. We don't know. That part of the settlement has been kind of kept mum, so we have no idea.
That's true. I mean,
both parties have been mutually satisfied, is what the official statement was.
All right, so even though the lawsuit was dropped, it's essentially a win for her because she, got what she wanted.
And it will probably have a chilling effect on Media Takeout and some other websites to report very honestly and fairly when they do in the future.
Do you think that people will take Media Takeout's stories with a larger grain of salt now that they have been forced to apologize?
Oh, yeah, certainly, especially if it's like an expose type story, yeah.
I think so. All right. I mean, it's too bad that that's sort of what does really well and not the truth.
Well, unfortunately, the Kardashian name is, good business, especially in media. So if people can find a way to use that and sensationalize something, then they may just take up that opportunity. But now they know they may have some consequences to pay.
Yeah. Well, apparently Kim was doing well enough today where...
She tweeted?
Well, no.
Instagram?
No, I was just going to say that Kanye was out of the house having a fun lunch today, where I just saw him at Nobu.
Yeah, you're sitting next to him.
Yeah, so apparently Kim's doing well enough to where he went out to Nobu with it. Looked like it was Scooter Braun.
Well, did you ask him to come on the show?
I thought about it, but I did not. No.
Kanye will not be on.
Right. What would I ask him to talk about?
The various legal cases surrounding the Kardashians
think he's
and
gonna
Jenners.
say anything?
Hey, you can weigh in.
No, I don't think so. But I did want to ask him why he left a massive piece of miso cod. I was about to go over there and take it. It was just such a shame to see such a big, beautiful piece of fish left behind. But anyway, very LA lunch of me, right?
Yeah.
To see him at Nobu. All right. And finally, this $10 billion lawsuit leveled by Byron Allen has overcome a pretty big hurdle.
Yep.
We talked about this, a while ago, right when this claim was filed. Byron Allen's got this entertainment company, and he has tried to get his shows sold to cable or DirecTV, and people have been like, meh or nah, and offered him much less money than he sees
Then they didn't take the offer. They didn't take the offer for...
And he is claiming that it's a discrimination because he's got a lot of black, content media shows and things of that nature. And so he has sued for $10 billion.
Yeah, and the case was allowed to continue. California federal judge George Wu found that there may be some grounds here that the charter may have been in violation of Section 1981 of the Civil Rights Act. And so the question really comes down to freedom of speech versus the Civil Rights Act. here, and whether or not, in what way you can curtail that. And so it kind of...
So this is about Charter Communication, a cable company, getting to decide to accept or pass on content that it's asked to carry.
So does that section say that you must now consider me as an African American? Does that infringe on your freedom of speech? If your speech is something that you get to regulate and you get to determine, then you should not have to have any limits on that. And so it was a case called Hurley that had to deal with a parade, and I guess a gay group wanted to be involved in the parade, and the Supreme Court found that due to the fact that the parade organizers were able to determine their own content and have their own speech, that would be infringement on them, so they were not allowed to march in that parade. And so whether or not this would be of the same...
So Charter would want to use Hurley to say, look, we get to decide what content, what speech, this is our deal.
And George Wu found, that parade and those organizers had a discrete message. But when you're a cable company and you're putting just different shows on different networks, it's not quite the same as having a speech, an intended speech, and an intended sort of message as a cable company.
Yeah.
And so I got that argument, and I think... and that's why largely George Wu let it continue.
Yeah. This is going to be a very tough case.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it overcame one big hurdle like this is actually big news if you're following this story.
Yeah, and we know that Byron Allen had sued AT&T before, and they settled, and he got some of his programming on DirecTV. So it's not unprecedented for him to, maybe notch a win here. So they may be looking towards settlement, because $10 million certainly is a hefty price to pay.
Yes. Yes, yes. So that brings us to the end of the stories that I had here on our rundown. It feels like there's fewer legal stories in the news unless it's related to Trump or Hillary. We don't really hear
that dominated much of the news cycle.
And then we do hear a lot about these like Trump accusers, but until these actually become real lawsuits, there's really not much for us to talk about.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the way of, evidence to weigh. I mean, really at this point, it's just people saying it happened, it didn't happen, and him saying it didn't happen. And so people ask me, why don't you guys cover that on the show? It's like, it's just all talk at this point. There's nothing actually legal.
Yeah, and you have the political show.
Yes, we do. Trump versus Hillary, Tuesday nights.
Yeah, so that is where you can get some of that.
Yeah. But even still, I mean, some of these women are represented by attorneys like Lori Allred and her daughter Lisa Bloom, and I'm sure there will be lawsuits, but a lot of them are being prepared to respond to lawsuits because he is claiming that he's going to sue them, and so they're gearing up to protect and defend themselves.
Yeah, he's got a number of legal cases on the horizon. I'm sure we'll be covering. I think he tried to extricate himself from the Trump University lawsuit as well. So.
Oh yes.
So we'll have a lot to talk about in the coming weeks.
Yeah, but until then, I think that would be it for today. Thank you so much for joining us on Justice is Served. You can like, tweet, comment, share. All that
5
good
stars.
stuff. Yes. Tweet me at Chelsea Galicia.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at Shaka Strong.
And be back here next week for another episode of Justice is Served. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
From executives Keven Undergaro, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, and the entire BHL staff, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us. info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I am the official voice of Black Hollywood Live, Scipio. Instagram me at KingXOBay. Thanks for tuning in. The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.